What is up, comic fan? Welcome to the Legion of Comics. I'm Mark, and today we're going to be taking a look at the September 14th announced Dawn of the DCU and talk about what it is, what it isn't, what we're looking forward to, and why you should consider enjoying the ride with us. But until we get into any of that, check this out. So to look at some of this stuff and to break some of it down, I brought in my brother from another mother, all the way hailing from the country of Texas. We have Mr. New Guy, Ryan himself.
Hey, what's up?
How's it going?
So, breaking some international broadcasting laws here.
I think so. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Yeah. So we've been talking about it, and especially on Instagram as well as on the channel on Sunday nights, this upcoming era for DC Comics, Dawn of the DCU. It was initially announced September 14th with very little to no information attached to it. They were kind of just heralding in the final issue of this current Dark Crisis book, but it's also giving readers an idea at the time of what to be looking forward to coming next. Since then, there's been a lot that's been posted on Instagram, on YouTube, all over the place, where people are trying just to get in on the conversation with little to no information. Well, now we have information. And I've been saying it from the get-go, but people are still screaming reboot, and it's driving me mad because I am a DC fanboy through and through, and I love facts. And this is not a reboot. So we're here today just to unpack what we know about this, explain a little bit about DC history, a little bit about the reboots, and why this is not one. So we're not going to waste a lot of time. Just a little bit on the history of DC Comics and the whole reboot little stigma that's attached to them. It all really goes back to the 80s with Crisis on Infinite Earths. DC Comics has been running since 1938 and has brought in so many characters from different worlds, eventually different universes. They bought other companies and brought them into their universe, and it got too big to handle. So they decided to do that massive mega event that Marv Wolfman and George Perez took on to slim down their line. They went from having literal infinite Earths down to one. And that created a space for them to tell stories that were easy for readers to pick up on, jump in on, and move forward with. Following that, there were some little loose threads, so they did 0 Hour to tighten up some of those even. But that event wasn't a reboot. There was no restart. There was no starting over. Even with Crisis on Infinite Earths, they didn't start over. They just used a story event to correct a real-world problem. Everything still was running linear at the time. Same through 0 Hour. So the first and only actual hard reboot that comics have seen came a little bit later. They used the miniseries Flashpoint, where you had the Flash who can manipulate hypertime and change the past to go back in time, attempt to save his mom, alter the events of the history, and eventually had to reset it. And that brought us to the era called New 52. What that was is the hard reboot that everyone still talks about. When they say they're going to reboot it again, this and that, this is actually the only one there's been. That's where they took all the characters, everybody, up until that point from 1938 to them, and they stopped. They just cut, put it on the shelf. We're not using it. And they took the same characters by name and costume design and started telling brand new stories with zero history attached to those characters. Superman was able to meet Batman for the first time again. Green Lantern and Flash were able to run side by side for the first time again. And that went on for a few years, but it got long in the tooth for countless different reasons. There's some good stuff to go back and check out, but they went and did what you could consider a soft reboot, where they didn't break the linear line this time. They didn't shelve everything, but they used a soft reboot, a new initiative called Rebirth, to open up their past continuity. They took the New 52 stuff and opened it up to the past continuity and started moving forward again, even taking the original numbering of the series that ended at the beginning of New 52 and carried them on till forward. And that's where we've been since then. We've had cosmic events. We've had earth-shaking stuff occur. None of it has reset anything. None of it has rebooted anything. Do you have massive changes from time to time? Absolutely. That's cause and effect of a story, though. Nothing more, nothing less. So that's what is a reboot with DC and a little bit on their history. So let's move forward. Dawn of the DCU is the next thing kicking off after this event. So, Ryan, what do we know about Dawn of the DCU?
Well, I mean, I think as the name suggests, this is putting a focus on more of the brighter side of the DC universe and superheroes in general, you know. over especially the last like 2 to 3 years, we've seen Batman kind of take over everything in the DC universe. We've seen a really dark and brooding and almost pessimistic tone to a lot of what's going on in superheroes lately. And so I think this is, based on the title, based on the information we have, this definitely seems like the architects of the DC universe really trying to put forward a concerted effort with focusing a little more on like optimistic superheroing and trying to find like a dawn in all the darkness that's been created, kind of culminating in a dark crisis. So we're coming out of that and we're finding the dawn. We're finding something bright to be excited about and move forward with. And so I think that's what this title really suggests.
So we're not expecting any cut the series, new number ones. We're not looking at, like, I've went and looked at solicitations all the way through the end of the January. Nightwing's going to be hitting issue 100, still moving forward. Action Comics 1051 still going. Like, nothing is getting reset. Nothing is getting changed. If you're reading the current Nightwing book, you know that 100 something they've been working toward. It's going through this Dawn era, through this event. If you've been reading any of the Superman titles, you know that they've been building up to this, and it's getting ready to just change its structure up and keep the same story and characters. They've been building up to that own narrative. None of this changing. Nothing. No. None of that is changing.
Mathematically, it doesn't even line up because we know that they've said specifically that there's about 20 titles that are part of the Dawn of the DC initiative. And we know from the announcement, we can add it up, and there's only like 8 to 10, and it's only covering the first 6 months of the year. So mathematically, if you break it down, there's not even enough content there to cover what all is going on for even half a year. So there's absolutely no way that they're dropping the lines that are already under construction. Like, we're not going to see Batman go away. We're not going to see Detective Comics go away. We're not going to see Nightwing, Superman, Action Comics. They have all kinds of stuff planned with them. So there's still plenty of stuff that's going to be going on. They're just talking about 20 titles that they're launching this year that are going to focus on more optimism.
And some of those they've announced already. They've given us an idea of what's going to be looking for it hitting shelves in the first half of the year with the ones that you see on the screen there and some of the writers that are attached to it. So we're seeing characters that have not been really helming their own title in a while coming to do that, like with multiple Green Lantern titles, a Doom Patrol title, Green Arrow's coming back in force. Joshua Williamson's writing that one even. We know that Mark Waid and Dan Mora have been crushing it at the back half of this last year. They're also building to be doing big things right now. So that's stuff to be looking forward to, where you're seeing like big names that are doing successful stuff with the company starting to expand those titles out. So you know that they're betting on those characters. They're betting on expanding their brand. We saw like Dawn of DCU is no different than the Infinite Frontier. They brand eras. It's an editorial brand. You just finished up a mega event. So you put a new branding on it. It lets people who are walking in to catch their eye. What's this? Oh, it's a jump on point. Every 6 months, Marvel will restart an entire series at issue number 1 and not break the story. Just for some reason, reset the numbering. DC does the same thing, but without breaking their numbering. They do branding. It's just the same. It's a simple branding.
Yeah, I imagine that as these titles come out, what we're going to see is a little header across the top of these specific titles that says Dawn of DC. Yeah.
If they look done right, they look really cool.
Yeah. And we know, Lost in Comics, they had the awesome Philip Kennedy Johnson on recently, just the other night, in fact, and as of recording. And, he talks about how like the Dawn of the DCU is an effort to look forward into the optimism. And he talks about how, he's read some of what Joshua Williamson has written on the new Superman title he's putting out. And even though I don't know that that's going to have the Dawn of DCU header on it, he talks about how it leans into the optimism that they're looking to bring forward. And he even references at one point specifically that Dawn of the DC is a jumping on point for a lot of people. It's going to be a concerted effort to bring people into the fold, to give people a chance to jump in with something they can say, like, I came in during the Dawn of the DC era, rather than just being like, oh yeah, I started reading at Action Comics 1052 or something, So it really draws the attention of readers, and especially like new readers or people that haven't been paying attention, gives them the chance to jump in without actually having to reboot the whole universe, because obviously people are tired of that.
Even despite the fact that it's only happened
right?
I just have these conversations so often with people, so I felt like it'd be a great opportunity for you and I to come on here and talk about what we know and what we didn't know. And so it's not a reboot, people. Reboots don't even happen that often. Just keep in mind the actual business aspect that goes behind this. It's literally a marketing strategy so that people can know something new's happening. Let me go take a look at it. This company does not start an issue 1 every 6 months. So how do you bring new eyes over to the beginning of something? This is how. When they release trade paperbacks, the ones that'll be coming out, these will be each Nightwing will have this on there, just like the Rebirth ones did, just like the Infinite Frontier ones do. Whenever there's a collected era of books, it's like almost an editorial era. You can like piece together eras in comic books when like these books came between these two events. It's a good starting point here. This is how it went on to the next era, kind of like in the real world. You can look at America or look at the world history in the past 100 years. Look what happened between wars. Like those are eras, like you had like baby boomers, then like you
whole generations.
Yeah, we're literally separated by generations between wars. That's how we even classify our own society. So it's no different with the books. It's really not as crazy as people think. It's not a reboot.
Yeah. I think divisive sells. I think negativity sells, and people jump on the reboot bandwagon. But like you highlighted here, there's not that many. There's like one hard reboot, maybe 2 soft reboots, or there's really not as many reboots as people want to pretend, and they feel like they're fatigued because the people running the headlines are telling you should be fatigued by reboots. But like you haven't even been through that many, so what are you tired of?
How many people have been reading comics consistently through the New 52? I mean, there's a lot, but definitely the majority of people that I talk to have gotten into comics within the last 5 years. Y'all haven't lived through reading comics through a reboot.
Yeah.
And if you did, you probably would have been excited for it because most people were at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what people should be excited for, because as you mentioned, in the last 5 years, and as I mentioned, within the last 3 especially, it's just been dark and brooding. Like everything goes wrong and it's always going to get worse, And so I think people, if you did start reading in the last 5 years, you should be more excited than ever that they're going to make an effort to like really be optimistic and excited. You look at stuff like Son of Kal-El and Nightwing, they've really brought a lot of optimism to being a superhero and shining a light on like how much good these heroes do in the world, instead of always being like, well, like this many people died because I was saving this one over here. Now they're looking at it from a more optimistic lens. And so I'm excited to see how they can bring that to a whole line, like 20 titles that look at the more optimistic side of superheroing. That sounds phenomenal to me after all the Batman I've seen for 3 years.
And for me specifically, just the idea of getting 20 title editions, because I've been writing this out since the great reduction happened at the end of 2020 with the executive shakeup that caused like the title lines to get shrank down to Batman +5 for the most part until they could rebuild it out. So we're finally at the point where they're getting to rebuild it out. And so there's no reason to be a reader and not be optimistic at this as well. Titles are going to rise, titles are going to fall. That's the nature of pushing this many out. But I'm definitely looking forward to it. And I hope if you're watching this, you be sure to check some of these out. Come hang out with us live every Sunday night at 9 p.m. right here on this channel for At Weeks In, where we read a lot of books. I lean real heavy DC. Ryan's currently reading a lot of DC and indies, but we have the comic vet that joins us who keeps us up on our Marvel stuff for us. So be sure to hit that thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, ring the notification bell so you don't miss out on that. And until next time, as always, I'm Mark, but we are Legion.
Boom.